"You think you scare me?" She laughed. Mafia boss cornered her and said, "Then why are you shaking?" The rain in Amberridge City did not wash the streets clean. It only made the grime slicker, turning the asphalt into a black mirror that reflected the neon desperation of the downtown district. It was 2 a.m, a time when honest people were asleep and the rest were looking for trouble or trying to forget it. Talia Vance stood behind the polished mahogany bar of the Blue Dahlia, drawing a crystal tumbler with a white cloth that had seen better days. The jazz club was a relic, a place of velvet curtains and thick smoke that smelled of expensive cigars and cheap regrets. The saxophone player in the corner was playing something low and mournful, a melody that seemed to weep for everyone in the room. Talia was tired. It was a bone-deep exhaustion that settled into her marrow, the kind that came from working double shifts to pay for medication that the insurance companies deemed unnecessary. She glanced at the antique clock on the wall. 3 hours left. 3 hours until she could go home to Leo. Her brother was the only reason she tolerated the wandering hands of drunk businessmen and the leering gazes of petty criminals who thought a wad of cash made them kings. Leo needed physical therapy, and he needed the specialized care that cost more than Talia made in a month at her day job. So, she worked the night shift at the Blue Dahlia, where the tips were heavy and the clientele was dangerous. The heavy oak door at the entrance creaked open, letting in a gust of damp night air. Usually, new arrivals barely register, but this time, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It was as if someone had sucked the oxygen out of the space. The low hum of conversation died. Even the saxophone player seemed to falter, missing a beat before recovering with a nervous trill. Talia looked up, her hand still moving automatically over the glass. 3 men walked in. The 2 on the flanks were large, their suits straining against shoulders built for violence. They scanned the room with cold, professional paranoia. But it was the man in the center who commanded the silence. Vincent DeMauro. You did not have to live in Amberridge long to know the name, and you certainly did not have to be part of the underworld to fear it. The DeMauro family had run this city since before the Prohibition era, and Vincent was the current architect of their empire. He was younger than people expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with a face that could have graced a magazine cover if it were not for the predatory intelligence in his dark eyes. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that probably cost more than Talia's apartment building, and he moved with the fluid, lethal grace of a panther stalking through the high grass. The owner of the club, a nervous man named Sal, practically tripped over his own feet rushing out from the back office. He looked like he might faint. Vincent ignored him. His gaze swept the room, dismissive and bored, until it landed on the bar, on Talia. She did not look away. She did not flinch. She just set the dried glass down on the rack and picked up another one. Vincent paused. He said something to his men, a sharp, silent command, and they peeled away to stand guard by the door. Vincent walked to the bar alone. The sound of his dress shoes on the hardwood floor was rhythmic, deliberate. He took a seat directly across from her, up close. He was devastating. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, and there was a faint scar running through his left eyebrow that only added to his allure. He smelled of rain, sandalwood, and cold, hard cash. "Whiskey," he said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth as velvet but heavy with authority. "Neat. The best you have." Talia didn't rush. She finished wiping the counter before she turned to the top shelf. She grabbed the bottle of 20-year-old single malt, poured a generous measure into a clean glass, and set it down in front of him on a coaster. "That will be $40, she said, her voice flat. Sal, who was hovering nearby, looked like he was about to have a stroke. He made frantic slashing motions across his throat, signaling her to comp the drink. Vincent noticed the gesture but kept his eyes on Talia. He pulled a crisp $50 bill from a silver clip and slid it across the wood. "Keep the change," he said. "I intend to," Talia replied, slipping the bill into her apron. Vincent took a slow sip of the whiskey, watching her over the rim of the glass. Most women, most men, in fact, could not hold his gaze for more than 2 seconds. They looked at their shoes, at the wall, anywhere but at the predator sitting in front of them. Talia Vance looked him dead in the eye, her expression bored. "You are new," Vincent observed. It was not a question. He knew every employee in every establishment under his protection. "I've been here 6 months," Talia said, turning to rinse a shaker in the sink. "Maybe you just don't get out much." A collective gasp seemed to ripple through the nearby tables. You did not sass Vincent DeMero. You thanked him for the air you breathed. Vincent lowered his glass. A corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I get out plenty. I just usually remember the things worth looking at." It was a line that was equal parts compliment and insult. Talia scoffed, a soft sound of derision that cut through the tension. "Is that your pickup line?" she asked, leaning her hip against the back counter. "Because it needs work. I expected better from the king of Amberridge." Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly. The amusement vanished, replaced by a sharper focus. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the bar. The casual slouch was gone. Now, he looked like a wolf deciding which limb to tear off first. "Do you know who I am?" he asked softly. "I know your name is on the lease of half the buildings in this district," Talia said, crossing her arms. "I know people cross the street when they see your car, and I know you are interrupting my closing duties." Vincent stared at her. He was fascinated. He was used to fear. He thrived on it. It was the currency of his world. But this girl, with her messy bun and tired eyes, looked at him like he was nothing more than an inconvenience. He decided to push. "It would be very easy for me to have you fired," Vincent said, his voice dropping to a conversational murmur that was somehow more threatening than a shout. "I could snap my fingers, and you would never work in this city again. I could have this place shut down tonight. Does that not worry you?" Talia laughed. It was a genuine bright sound that seemed out of place in the gloomy bar. "You think you scare me?" she asked, shaking her head. "Mr. DeMero, I have a landlord who threatens eviction every Tuesday, a brother who needs medicine I can't afford, and I take the night bus home through the Narrows. You in a suit threatening my job? That is the least terrifying thing that has happened to me all week." She reached for the rag to wipe down the counter in front of him, dismissing him. Vincent moved faster than she could track. His hand shot out and wrapped around her wrist. It wasn't a painful grip. He didn't squeeze, but it was absolute. It was the grip of a man who never let go of anything he wanted. Talia froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a sudden, violent rhythm. Vincent leaned in close. The sense of him filled her senses, danger and spice. His face was inches from hers. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark irises. "You talk a big game," he whispered, the Italian endearment rolling off his tongue like a curse. "You stand there and tell me I am nothing to fear." He shifted his grip slightly, his thumb pressing against the pulse point on the inside of her wrist. Her heart was racing so fast it felt like a hummingbird trapped in a cage. Her breath hitched in her throat. "If I don't scare you," Vincent murmured, his eyes dropping to her lips before snapping back to her gaze. "Then why are you shaking?" Talia stared at him, her mouth slightly open. She hadn't realized she was trembling until he pointed it out. A fine vibration ran through her arm, betraying her. But as she looked at him, she realized with a jolt of horror that it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. It was the sheer, overwhelming intensity of his presence. It was the electric shock of his skin against hers. It was a physical reaction to a man who radiated power like a blast furnace. She yanked her arm back. He let her go instantly, his fingers trailing away slowly, savoring the release. Talia took a step back, putting distance between them. Her chest was heaving. "I'm shaking because I've been on my feet for 10 hours. She lied, her voice unsteady. "And because you're annoying me." Vincent sat back on his stool. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile broke across his face. It transformed him, making him look younger, less like a monster and more like a man who had just found a diamond in a pile of coal. "Go home, Talia," he said, using her name like he owned it. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. He dropped another $100 on the bar. "Sal." Vincent called out without looking away from her. The owner materialized instantly. Yes, Mr. DeMaro? Give Miss Vance the rest of the night off. Paid. Of course. Mr. DeMaro, immediately. Vincent looked at Talia one last time. My driver is outside. He will take you wherever you need to go. Talia bristled. Her pride was the only thing she had left, and she wasn't about to sell it for a ride in a luxury sedan. No, thank you, she said sharply. I can get myself home. Vincent's smile faded slightly. He wasn't used to hearing the word no. It is raining. It is dangerous. I like the rain, Talia said, untying her apron and throwing it onto the back counter. And I can handle the danger. She grabbed her purse and coat, storming past Sal toward the back exit before Vincent could say another word. The alley behind the blue dahlia was dark and smelled of wet garbage. Talia pulled her coat tighter around herself, cursing under her breath. Her hands were still shaking. She shoved them into her pockets, furious with herself. Why are you shaking? His voice echoed in her head. She hated him. She hated the way he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. She hated that for a split second when he touched her. She hadn't wanted to pull away. She turned onto 4th Street, heading toward the bus stop. The streetlights here were broken, shattered by kids with nothing better to do. The shadows stretched long and hungry. She heard footsteps behind her. Talia didn't panic. She grew up in Amberridge. She reached into her purse, her fingers wrapping around the canister of pepper spray attached to her keys. She kept walking, her pace steady. The footsteps sped up. She turned the corner and glanced back. 2 men, hooded sweatshirts, hands in their pockets. They weren't just walking, they were tracking. Hey, sweetheart, one of them called out. His voice was slurred, aggressive. Are you in a rush? Talia spun around, the pepper spray raised. Back off. I have nothing on me. We ain't looking for money. The second one laughed, stepping closer. Talia braced herself. She knew where to aim. Eyes, then groin, then run. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt at the curb, a massive black SUV. The back door didn't open. The front passenger door did. A giant of a man stepped out. He made the 2 thugs look like children. He wore a dark suit and an earpiece. It was the man who had stood at Vincent's left side in the bar. He didn't say a word. He just walked toward the 2 men. The thugs hesitated. They were stupid, but they weren't suicidal. They saw the suit, the car, and the way the man carried himself. We're leaving, one of them muttered. They turned and sprinted back down the alley, vanishing into the dark. The giant turned to Talia. He had a face like a slab of granite, unmoving and unreadable. Boss says get in the car, Miss Vance, he rumbled. Talia lowered the pepper spray but didn't move. I told him no. Boss says if you don't get in, I have to walk you home, and I have bad knees. Don't make me walk in the rain. Talia blinked. It was such an absurd thing for a terrifying mob enforcer to say. She looked at the empty, rain-slicked street, then at the retreating backs of the thugs. She looked at the warm, dry car. Fine, she huffed. She climbed into the back seat. It was empty. Vincent wasn't there. She felt a pang of something that might have been relief, or might have been disappointment. She squashed it immediately. The giant got into the driver's seat. My name's Rocco. Talia. I know. The drive was silent. Rocco drove with a smooth precision that suggested he had been a getaway driver in a past life. The leather seats were soft, and the car smelled faintly of the same sandalwood cologne Vincent wore. It was infuriating. When they pulled up to her crumbling apartment complex, Rocco put the car in park. He didn't unlock the doors immediately. Instead, he turned around and handed her a small, cream-colored card. There was no name on it, just a number embossed in black ink. He wants you to call him, Rocco said. Talia took the card, frowning. To thank him? Rocco shrugged. He didn't say. Just said to give you the number. Talia shoved the card into her pocket. Tell him thanks for the ride, and tell him to stay away from my bar. Rocco actually chuckled, a low, gravelly sound. You tell him yourself. The locks clicked open. Talia scrambled out into the rain and ran for the front door of her building, not looking back until she was safely inside the lobby. Her apartment was quiet. The rhythmic hum of the oxygen machine in the living room was the only sound. Talia tiptoed past the hallway to peek into the second bedroom. Leo was asleep. He looked so young when he slept. His face relaxed, the pain of his condition smoothed away by dreams. He was 20, only 4 years younger than her, but the accident 2 years ago had left him with a spinal injury and a compromised immune system. He was her world. She would burn the city down to keep him safe, and Vincent DeMauro was the kind of man who held the matches. Talia went to the kitchen and poured herself a mug of cheap tea. Her hands were still trembling slightly. She sat at the wobbly kitchen table and stared at the card Rocco had given her. She should throw it away. She should tear it into confetti and flush it down the toilet. Instead, she picked up her phone. She dialed the number, her fingers angry as they jabbed the screen. It rang once. "I assume you are home safe," Vincent's voice answered. "No hello, just that smooth, arrogant assumption." "You had me followed," Talia snapped, skipping the pleasantries. "You had your goons stalk me." "I had my head of security ensure you didn't get mugged in an alley," Vincent corrected calmly. "And it seems I was right to do so. You're welcome. By the way, I didn't ask for your help," Talia hissed, keeping her voice low so she wouldn't wake Leo. "I don't need a keeper. DeMauro, I've been surviving in this city my whole life without you. Surviving isn't living. Talia..." The use of her name again sent a shiver down her spine. It felt intimate, intrusive. "Don't pretend you care," she said. "You're just annoyed that I didn't swoon like everyone else. I'm not one of your little projects." There was a pause on the line. She could hear the clink of ice against the glass. He was drinking. "You are certainly not little," Vincent said, his voice dropping an octave. "You have a mouth on you that could strip paint. It's refreshing." "Go to hell. I'm already there. Sweetheart, I run the place." Talia gripped the phone tighter. "Stop following me. Stop coming to my job. I'm nobody. Find someone else to play with." "I don't want to play," Vincent said. The playfulness vanished from his tone, replaced by a dark intensity that traveled through the cellular network and settled right in her chest. "I want to know why you looked at me tonight and didn't blink." "Everyone blinks." "Talia, why didn't you?" "Because," Talia said, her voice barely a whisper, "monsters don't scare me. I see them every day. Is that what I am? A monster? Aren't you?" Vincent laughed softly. It was a dark, seductive sound. "Sleep well. Talia, try not to dream of me." He hung up. Talia stared at the phone, her breathing shallow. She slammed it down on the table and buried her face in her hands. She was furious. She was terrified. And God help her. She was electrified. She went to bed, determined to block him out. She focused on her breathing. She counted sheep. She thought about the grocery list. But when sleep finally claimed her, the darkness didn't bring peace. She was back in the bar. The lights were out. The air was hot, heavy with impending storms. Vincent was there. Standing in the shadows, he reached out, his hand wrapping around her wrist. "Why are you shaking?" he whispered in the dream. He pulled her close. She could feel the heat of his body, the rough texture of his suit jacket against her cheek. In the dream. She didn't pull away. She leaned in. She tilted her head back, offering her throat to the wolf. Talia woke up with a gasp, her sheets tangled around her legs, her skin flushed and hot. She sat up in the dark, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She touched her lips, which felt swollen and tingling. "I hate him," she whispered to the empty room. But as she lay back down, staring at the ceiling, she knew it was a lie. Hate was simple. Hate was clean. This was something else entirely, and that was what terrified her most of all. The blue dahlia had changed. The jazz was still mournful, the whiskey still burned, and the shadows still clung to the corners like cobwebs. But the atmosphere had shifted. It was no longer just a dive bar for the desperate. It had become a throne room. For 2 weeks, Vincent DeMauro had occupied the corner booth every single night. He never ordered anything. He simply sat there, a glass of untouched, sparkling water in front of him, one leg crossed over the other, reading a newspaper or scrolling through his phone, but mostly He watched. His dark eyes followed Talia Vance with a terrifying precision as she moved from the taps to the tables. The effect on the clientele was immediate and absolute. The drunk businessmen who used to leave grabby tips kept their hands firmly in their pockets. The local hustlers who usually made lewd comments now stared at their drinks in silence, terrified to even glance in Talia's direction. It was as if an invisible force field had been erected around her, a barrier made of Vincent's silent, suffocating menace. Talia hated it. She loved it. It confused her more than she cared to admit. On a Tuesday night, during a lull in the service, she finally snapped. She marched over to his booth, slamming a coaster down on the table with enough force to make his water glass jump. "Are you stalking me?" she demanded, her voice low but furious. Vincent looked up slowly. He didn't look surprised. He looked bored, though a flicker of amusement danced in his eyes. "Good evening to you too, Talia." "Don't good evening me. You are here every night. You scare away my customers. You stare at me like I am a particularly interesting bacteria under a microscope. Are you stalking me?" Vincent closed his newspaper and folded it neatly. Stalking implies a lack of consent and a hidden agenda. I am sitting in a public establishment. And as for your customers, they seem to be tipping better now that they are too afraid to be rude. You should be thanking me. "I don't want your help, and I don't want your protection," Talia hissed, leaning in closer so the bartender wouldn't hear. "I can handle myself." "Can you?" Vincent tilted his head. The movement was predatory. "This city eats pretty things. Talia, I am just protecting my investment." Talia recoiled as if he had slapped her. "Investment? Is that what I am? Something you buy?" She scoffed, a harsh sound in her throat, but beneath the anger, a treacherous flush of heat crept up her neck. He considered her his. The arrogance of it was infuriating, but the possessiveness of it made her knees weak. "You're wasting your time," she said, straightening up. "I'm not for sale, and I'm not interested." Vincent just smiled. That rare ghost of a smile that made him look less like a kingpin and more like a man. "We'll see." The tension broke 3 nights later. It was closing time. Sal had left early with a migraine, leaving Talia to lock up. The rain was hammering against the windows, a relentless, drowning downpour that isolated the club from the rest of the world. Talia was wiping down the back bar, exhausted. She turned to toss a rag into the bin and nearly collided with a solid wall of muscle. She gasped. Stumbling back, Vincent was standing there. She hadn't heard him approach. He moved like smoke. "You're still here?" she breathed, her heart leaping into her throat. "I thought you left." "I waited," Vincent said simply. He was too close. The air between them crackled with static electricity. He wasn't wearing his jacket tonight. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the hollow of his throat. "You need to leave. Vincent, I have to lock up." "Make me." The challenge hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Talia looked up at him, her chin raised in defiance. "You think because you run this city, you can have whatever you want? You think you can just stand there and wait for me to fall at your feet?" "I think," Vincent murmured, taking a step forward, forcing her back against the shelf of liquor bottles, "that you have been thinking about this as much as I have." "I haven't," she lied. "Liar." He reached out, his hand cupping her jaw. His thumb brushed over her bottom lip, dragging it down slightly. The touch was electric. Talia's breath hitched. She should push him away. She should scream. Instead, she froze. Vincent lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to run. When she didn't, he closed the distance. The kiss was not gentle. It was a claim. It was slow, deep, and overwhelmingly dominant. He tasted of mint and darkness. His mouth moved over hers with a masterful pressure that demanded a response. For a second, Talia drowned in it. Then, panic flared, the panic of losing control, of giving in to a man who represented everything she hated. She wrenched herself back and swung her hand. The slap echoed through the empty bar like a gunshot. Vincent's head snapped to the side. The silence that followed was deafening. Talia stood there, her chest heaving, her hand stinging. Fear ice-watered through her veins. "You did not slap Vincent DeMauro. People died for less. Vincent turned his face back to her. His cheek was reddening. His eyes were pitch black, pupils blown wide. He didn't look angry. He looked hungry. Better, he growled. Before she could blink, he surged forward. He grabbed her by the waist and lifted her effortlessly, spinning her around and marching her backward. "Vincent!" she gasped. He didn't stop until they were in the back storage room. He pressed her against the stack of crates, his body a heavy, solid weight against hers. The room smelled of sawdust and aged bourbon. "Hit me again," he whispered against her neck, his hands gripping her hips, his fingers digging into her flesh through her dress. "Show me that fire." Talia didn't hit him. She grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him down. She kissed him back with a desperation that matched his own. It was a collision of violence and desire. There was no tenderness here, only a raw, starving need that had been building for weeks. They moved together in a chaotic tangle of limbs and heat. Vincent's hands were everywhere, in her hair, on her waist, tracing the line of her spine. He touched her with a reverence that contradicted the roughness of his actions. He made her feel fragile and invincible all at once. Talia's hands found the skin beneath his shirt, hot and scarred. She felt the hard muscles of his back tense under her palms. The world outside, the rain, the debt, Leo, the danger ceased to exist. There was only this room, and this man, and the terrifying realization that she fit against him perfectly. He lifted her onto a sturdy wooden crate, stepping between her legs. He pressed his forehead against hers, both of them gasping for air. "You are dangerous," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I am the safest place in the world for you," he replied, biting gently at the sensitive cord of her neck. "Don't," she warned, her hands gripping his shoulders to anchor herself. "Don't you dare fall for me. Vincent, I will ruin you." Vincent pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. His expression was stripped bare, devoid of his usual mask of indifference. "Too late," he said. The words hung there, heavy and terrifying. Talia searched his face, looking for the joke, the sarcasm. She found none. He kissed her again, softer this time, but with a finality that frightened her more than his anger ever could. The euphoria lasted exactly 12 hours. The next morning, Talia opened the door to her apartment to retrieve the milk and found a dead starling on her welcome mat. Its neck was broken. Attached to its leg was a small, rolled-up strip of paper. Talia's hands shook as she untied it. Birds who fly too high fall hard. She dropped the note as if it were burning. She kicked the bird into the bushes and ran back inside, locking the door and leaning against it, her heart hammering. It started 3 days ago. First, it was silent phone calls, then a photo of her walking Leo to his therapy appointment, slipped under her door. Now this. She wanted to call Vincent. His number was burned into her memory, but she hesitated. If she told him, what would he do? He would go to war. He would kill people. And worse, he would think she was weak. She was just the bartender he was sleeping with. She wasn't part of his world. If she became a liability, a weakness, would the investment still be worth protecting? Or perhaps he would lock her away in a gilded cage for her own safety. Talia Vance did not do cages. She flushed the note down the toilet and washed her hands with scalding water until they were red. She would handle this herself. Across town, in the penthouse suite of the Damaro headquarters, the atmosphere was frigid. Vincent stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the gray skyline. He was still buzzing from the night before. The scent of Talia was still on his skin. It was a distraction he could not afford, and yet it was the only thing making him feel alive. "Boss," a voice cut through his reverie. Silvio, his lieutenant and oldest friend, stood near the mahogany desk. Silvio was older, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen too much blood. "Spit it out." "Silvio, we have a leak," Silvio said quietly. "The shipment at the docks was hit last night. They knew the exact time and the container number. Only 4 people knew those details." Vincent turned slowly. "Who?" "I'm looking into it. But Vincent, the chatter on the street is not just about the shipment. It is about a girl." Vincent stiffened. "Talia has nothing to do with this, doesn't she?" Silvio stepped forward. People are talking. They say the Damaro wolf has a soft spot. They say he is distracted. Someone is trying to provoke a war. Vincent Wangdali. And they are going to use her to get to you. If you care about her, you need to cut her loose, or you need to bury everyone who looks at her sideways. I am not cutting her loose, Vincent said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Then prepare for war, Sylvia replied grimly, because it is coming to her doorstep. Talia needed answers. She couldn't ask Vincent, so she went to the only other connection she had to that world. Mr. Henderson ran a pawn shop on 5th Street. He had been her father's best friend before her father died of a heart attack 5 years ago. He was a fence for stolen goods, but he had always been kind to Talia and Leo. The shop smelled of dust and old metal. Mr. Henderson was behind the counter, polishing a silver watch. He looked up as the bell chimed, his face paling when he saw her. Talia, he said nervously, you shouldn't be here. Why is everyone telling me where I should be? Talia snapped, leaning on the counter. I need to know something. Harry, my dad, did he know the Damaros? Harry stopped polishing. He looked at the door, then back at her. Your father was a good man, Talia, but he had bad habits. The horses, the cards. Talia felt a cold pit form in her stomach. How much? He borrowed money, Harry whispered. From Vincent's father. A lot of money. When the old man died and Vincent took over, the debt. It was never officially cleared. It just sat there. Did Vincent know? Vincent knows everything. He owns the debt now. Talia stepped back, feeling sick. Protecting my investment. Was that all this was? Was she just a way to collect on a dead man's mistake? Did he get close to her because he owned her before they even met? The intimacy of the night before suddenly felt tainted, calculated. Thanks, Harry, she muttered, turning to leave. Talia, wait, Harry called out. Watch your back. The streets are changing. There are new players, dangerous ones. Talia walked home in a daze. The betrayal stung her eyes. She had let herself feel something for a man who likely saw her as a line item in a ledger. As she approached the bus stop near her apartment, a black sedan pulled up. It wasn't one of Vincent's SUVs. It was older, rusted around the wheel wells. The window rolled down. A man sat in the driver's seat. He had a snake tattoo curling up his neck and a smile that made her skin crawl. Get in, Miss Vance, he said. It wasn't a request. Talia backed away, reaching for her pepper spray. I'll scream. You do that, the man said, holding up a phone. And my friend, who is currently parked outside the rehab center watching your brother Leo walk out, will press the accelerator. Talia froze. The blood drained from her face. If you touch him, I will kill you. Big words. The man laughed. Get in. She got in. They didn't drive far. Just around the block to a deserted parking lot. The man turned in his seat. Who are you? Talia demanded, her voice shaking with rage. I represent the Sorvino family. The man said, We are concerned citizens. We think Vincent Damaro has held on to power for too long. We want to help the city move on. What do you want with me? Vincent has a weakness now. He trusts you. He lets you into his bed. The man's eyes raked over her disgustingly. We want you to do a little job for us. Be our eyes. Be our ears. Tell us where he sleeps. Tell us when he is alone. You want me to spy on him, Talia said flatly. So you can kill him. We want to liberate the city, the man corrected. Here is the deal, sweetheart. You help us, and your father's debt disappears. We will give you $50,000 in cash. You can take your crippled brother and move to Florida. And if I say no? The man's smile vanished. Then Leo has an accident. It is amazing how dangerous crossing the street can be for a boy in a wheelchair. Talia stared at him. She thought of Vincent, the way he looked at her in the storage room. Too late. She thought of Leo. Innocent. Fragile Leo. She was trapped. Between a monster she was falling in love with and a monster who held a knife to her brother's throat. I need time, she whispered. You have 24 hours, the man said. If you tell Damaro about this conversation, we will kill the boy immediately. Don't test us. He unlocked the doors. Talia stumbled out of the car, her legs barely holding her up. She watched the sedan drive away, disappearing into the traffic. She stood alone on the cracked pavement. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain again. She wasn't shaking anymore. She was frozen solid. She had to choose: betray the man who made her feel alive, or sacrifice the brother she had sworn to protect. As the first drops of rain began to fall, mixing with the tears on her face, Talia realized that the game had changed. She wasn't just a player anymore. She was the prize and the weapon, and either way, she was going to bleed. The 24 hours given to Talia Vance felt less like a countdown and more like a noose slowly tightening around her throat. Every tick of the clock was a reminder of the impossible choice she had to make: the life of the man who set her blood on fire, or the life of the brother who was her only family. She chose the third option: rejection. The meet was set in the loading bay behind an abandoned textile factory in the industrial district, neutral ground, or so the Sorvino messenger had claimed. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with humidity and the metallic tang of wet rust. Talia stood with her arms crossed, her back straight despite the terror clawing at her insides. The black sedan rolled up, tires crunching on gravel. The same man with the snake tattoo stepped out, his smile oily and confident. "Time is up, sweetheart," he said, leaning against the hood. "Tell me you have good news. Tell me you are ready to be a patriot for this city." "I'm not doing it," Talia said. Her voice did not shake. She had practiced this in the mirror 100 times in the last hour. "I won't spy on him. I won't help you kill him." The man's smile vanished instantly. He sighed, a theatrical sound of disappointment. "That is the wrong answer. We discussed the consequences. Your brother. If you touch Leo," Talia interrupted, stepping forward, her eyes blazing. "I will go to the police. I will go to the press. I will scream so loud that every cop in the state will be looking at you." "The police?" The man laughed, a harsh bark. "We own the police. And now, you have just signed your brother's death warrant. Shame. He looked like a sweet kid." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a phone. "I'm making the call." Talia lunged, though she had no weapon, no plan, just blind panic. But before she could take 2 steps, a shadow detached itself from the darkness of the loading bay entrance. "Put the phone away. Enzo," a voice commanded. It was not loud, but it carried the weight of a tombstone. The Sorvino man froze. His eyes widened as Vincent DeMaro stepped into the dim pool of light cast by a flickering street lamp. Vincent was not alone. Rocco and 3 other men materialized from the gloom, weapons drawn but held low. Vincent did not look at the messenger. He looked at Talia. His face was a mask of terrifying indifference, his eyes cold and unreadable. "Vincent," Talia breathed, the fight draining out of her legs. "You—" Enzo stammered, backing up against his car. "This is a violation of the truce." "There is no truce when you threaten civilians," Vincent said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Go back to your boss. Tell Sorvino that if he ever approaches her again, I will not just kill him. I will erase his entire bloodline from the history books. Go." Enzo didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled into the car, the tires screeching as he peeled out of the lot, leaving the smell of burnt rubber in his wake. The silence that followed was suffocating. Talia wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "You followed me." "Of course I followed you," Vincent said. He walked toward her, stopping 3 feet away. He didn't touch her. He didn't reach for her. He just stared, his jaw set in a hard line. "How long?" "Yesterday," Talia whispered. "They cornered me after I left the pawn shop. And you didn't tell me?" It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "They threatened Leo, Vincent. They said they had someone watching the clinic. I couldn't risk it." "So you decided to handle the Sorvino crime family by yourself?" Vincent's voice rose slightly, the anger finally cracking through the ice. "You stood there and told them no, knowing what they might do. You chose to protect me instead of your own blood." "I wasn't choosing you over him," Talia shouted back, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "I was trying to save you both. I knew if I told you, you would start a war tonight, and Leo would be caught in the crossfire. I thought I could bluff them. You don't bluff men like that, Talia." You kill them." Vincent looked at her, shaking his head slowly. He looked disappointed. He looked distant. The heat that usually flared between them was gone, replaced by a wall of glacial reserve. "Get in the car," he said, turning his back on her. "Rocco will take you home." "Vincent, go home, Talia!" He walked away toward his own vehicle, leaving her standing in the damp gravel, her heart breaking in a way she hadn't expected. He believed her. Yes. But he had shut her out. The apartment was too quiet. Leo was staying overnight at the clinic for observation, a scheduled visit that now felt like a mercy. Talia couldn't bear to have him see her like this. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall. It was past midnight. She had showered, scrubbing her skin until it was raw, trying to wash away the feeling of the encounter. But the coldness of Vincent's eyes stayed with her. He was done with her. That was it. She had proven to be a liability, a complication. He had saved her life, and in return, he had cut her loose. A heavy knock on her front door made her jump. She hesitated, her pulse spiking. "Who is it?" No answer, just another knock. Louder this time, commanding. Talia unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. Vincent stood in the hallway. He was soaked. The rain had started again, and his hair was plastered to his forehead, water dripping from the hem of his black trench coat, and he looked wrecked. The composure he had worn in the loading bay was gone, shattered into 1,000 pieces. His eyes were wild, dark pits of exhaustion and raw hunger. "Vincent?" He didn't speak. He stepped inside, kicking the door shut behind him with a slam that shook the frames on the walls. Before she could take a breath, he was on her. He grabbed her face between his hands, his grip firm, almost bruising. He looked at her as if he needed to memorize the map of her features before the world ended. "You could have died," he rasped, his voice broken. "You stupid, stubborn woman. You could have died tonight." "I didn't," Talia whispered, her hands clutching the lapels of his wet coat. "You were there." "I am not always there," he roared, the sound tearing out of his chest. Then he kissed her. It wasn't like the first time in the storage room. There was no game here, no power play, no seductive dance. This was desperation. This was fear transmuted into physical need. His mouth crushed hers, devouring, seeking reassurance that she was real, that she was warm, that she was breathing. Talia didn't pull away. She met him with equal force, her anger at his coldness dissolving into the fire of his touch. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, needing to feel the weight of him to ground herself. They stumbled backward, knocking a stack of books off the entryway table, neither of them caring. Vincent's hands were frantic, stripping away the layers of clothes, his wet coat, her sweater, until there was nothing between them but skin and heat. He lifted her, wrapping her legs around his waist, and carried her to the bedroom. He didn't lay her down gently. He fell with her onto the mattress, his body covering hers like a shield, like a blanket of lead. The intimacy that followed was rough, emotionally jagged. There were no sweet nothings whispered in the dark. It was a silent, heavy collision of souls. Vincent moved with a terrifying intensity, his eyes locked on hers, his brow furrowed as if in pain. He touched her as if he were trying to fuse them together, to make it impossible for any threat to ever tear her away again. Talia dug her nails into his shoulders, anchoring him. She felt his fear, the terror of a man who had realized he had something to lose. It made her heart ache. It made her love him. When the crest finally broke, leaving them both gasping and tangled in the sheets, the silence returned. But it wasn't the cold silence of the loading bay. It was heavy, thick with unspoken things. Vincent rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling. His chest heaved. He reached out blindly and found her hand. He interlaced their fingers, his grip so tight it almost hurt. He didn't say a word. He just held on. Talia turned her head to look at him. The hard lines of his face were softened by the shadows, but there was a sadness in his profile that shattered her defenses. The tears came without warning, silent at first, then shaking her shoulders until she was sobbing. She cried for the fear she had swallowed all day, for the threat against Leo, and for the terrifying reality that she was in love with a man who lived in the crosshairs. Vincent didn't try to hush her. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply pulled her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, over and over again, while she wept into the pillow. The next morning, the world had not ended, but it had expanded. Vincent didn't leave. Instead, he made coffee. "Get dressed," he said, handing her a mug. "You are coming with me." "Where?" Talia asked, her eyes swollen but clear. "To see what you almost died for." He took her to the heart of his operation. Not the dark alleys or the back rooms of clubs, but the DeMauro logistics hub at the docks. It was a massive warehouse complex, bustling with legitimate activity. Cranes lifted containers, forklifts zipped back and forth, and men in high-visibility vests shouted orders. 80% of what I do is legal," Vincent said as they walked along the catwalk overlooking the floor. "Imports, exports, construction, waste management, we keep the city building, we keep the shelves stocked. And the other 20%, Talia asked. "Protect the 80, Vincent replied grimly. "And pays for the bribes that keep the inspectors away?" He brought her into the main office, a glass-walled room that overlooked the operation. He showed her the ledgers, not the fake ones for the IRS, but the real ones. He showed her the schedules, the payrolls, the vast, intricate web of money and influence that he sat at the center of. Talia resisted at first, folding her arms, not wanting to be complicit. But as he explained the flow of goods, the way he balanced the unions against the city council, she couldn't help but be fascinated. It wasn't just crime, it was an ecosystem. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, tracing a line on a shipping manifest. "Because if you are going to be targeted for being close to me, you should know what you are caught up in," Vincent said. "I am done hiding things from you." Talia looked down at the papers spread across the desk. Her eyes, trained by years of managing inventory and bar tabs where every penny counted, caught a discrepancy. "Vincent," she said, pointing to a column, "look at this." He leaned in, his shoulder brushing hers. "What?" "This shipment of electronics. It was logged as arriving on Tuesday at Dock 4. But here, in the security duty roster, Rocco had his team stationed at Dock 9 on Tuesday night. Why would your head of security be at an empty dock?" Vincent went still. He snatched the paper, his eyes scanning the dates. "Dock 9 is a blind spot," he muttered. "No cameras. If Rocco was there, it was because he was told the shipment was coming in there. But the manifest says Dock 4, Talia said. Someone changed the paperwork after the fact, or someone gave Rocco the wrong location to leave the real shipment vulnerable." Vincent straightened up, his face darkening. "Only 3 people have access to the duty roster and the manifests. Mr. Silvio and my cousin Marcello. Who manages the manifests?" "Marcello," Vincent said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. "He runs the import division." The betrayal hung in the air, sharp and bitter. It wasn't just a leak, it was family. "We have to be sure," Vincent said, his voice low. "But you have a sharp eye. Talia, I know how to spot a thief," she said quietly. "Bartenders see everything." The drive back to the city was tense. Vincent was on his phone, barking orders in Italian, his tone clipped and furious. When he finally hung up, he turned to her. "I'm putting a detail on you, and on Leo." Talia stiffened. "No, Leo gets scared of loud noises. Vincent, 2 guys in suits with guns standing outside his room will give him a panic attack. He'll think he's in trouble." "The Sorvinos know where he is," Vincent said, his voice brooking no argument. "They threatened to kill him to get to me. I am not asking. Talia, I am telling you. 2 men, round the clock. They will be discreet, dressed as orderlies if they have to be, but they will be there. He's just a kid," Talia pleaded, though she knew he was right. "He is a target," Vincent corrected. "And so are you. If you want to be part of my life, this is the cost. Safety is an illusion. Protection is real." Talia looked out the window at the passing city. She hated it. She hated that her innocent brother was now a pawn on a chessboard he couldn't even see. But she remembered the snake tattoo and the cold terror of the loading bay. "Fine," she said softly. "But if they scare him, I will shoot them myself." Vincent reached across the console and took her hand. Deal. 2 nights later, the DeMauro family was hosting a charity gala for the Amberridge Children's Hospital. It was the kind of event where blood money was washed clean with champagne and tax-deductible donations. Vincent insisted Talia attend. She wore an emerald green silk dress he had sent to her apartment. It fit like a second skin, slit high on the thigh, armor made of satin. She stood by his side in the ballroom of the Grand Hotel, feeling entirely out of place among the politicians and socialites. Vincent's hand never left the small of her back. He was marking her, showing the room exactly where she stood. The night was going smoothly until Vincent's phone buzzed. He checked it, and Talia felt the muscles in his back turn to stone. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a marble statue of wrath. "What?" she asked, gripping his arm. "The blue dahlia," he said, his voice a calm that was far more terrifying than a scream. "It's gone." Talia blinked. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "Firebombed, 10 minutes ago. Someone threw a Molotov through the front window." Talia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Sal, the band?" "They got out, minor burns. The place was empty, mostly, but the building is a loss." Talia felt the room spin. The jazz bar, her job, the place where she had met him, the place that smelled of old wood and resilience, burned to ash. "Why?" she whispered. Vincent looked down at her. His eyes were full of a dark, swirling sorrow. "Because that is where I found you. Because they know I care about it. It wasn't an attack on business. Talia, it was a message, directed at you." He grabbed her hand. "We are leaving. Now." He didn't take her home. He took her to his penthouse. It was a fortress of glass and steel atop the city's tallest residential tower. It was beautiful, cold, and secure. Talia paced the living room, her heels clicking on the marble floors. She was shaking again. First the threat to Leo, now her livelihood destroyed. The war wasn't coming. It was here. "I should go check on Sal," she said, moving toward the door. "You are not going anywhere," Vincent said from the kitchen, where he was pouring 2 glasses of brandy. "You are staying here? Tonight, and until I say otherwise." "I can't just hide in your tower, Vincent." "Yes, you can, and you will." He walked over and handed her the glass. "Drink." She drank it in one burning gulp. The alcohol hit her stomach like a fist, dulling the edge of the panic. "You take the bed," Vincent said, gesturing down the hall. "I have work to do." "I'll sleep on the couch," Talia argued, looking at the massive white leather sofa. "I'm not taking your bed." "Talia, I mean it. Vincent, I'm sleeping here." She kicked off her heels and curled up on the couch, pulling a throw blanket over herself. Turning her back to him, she was exhausted, emotionally drained, and she needed to feel like she still had some control, even if it was just over where she slept. Vincent didn't argue. He retreated to his study. Talia drifted into a fitful sleep, haunted by images of fire and dead birds. Sometime in the deep hours of the night, she felt herself being lifted. She stirred, groggy. "Vincent?" He didn't speak. He held her effortlessly, her head resting against his chest, hearing the steady, powerful beat of his heart. He carried her down the hallway, past the study where the lights still burned, and into the master bedroom. He laid her down on the massive bed. The sheets were cool and smelled of him. Talia watched him through half-open eyes. He didn't undress. He didn't climb in with her. He just pulled the duvet up to her chin, tucking it in with a gentleness that belied the violence of his world. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hand brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. His face was shadowed, but his voice was clear in the silence of the room. "I will burn the city to the ground to find them," he whispered. It was a vow, a promise made to the dark. "I'll kill whoever did this. Talia, I swear it." He leaned down and kissed her forehead, a chaste, protective touch. "Sleep," he commanded softly. Talia closed her eyes, the warmth of the bed surrounding her, while the monster who loved her sat vigil in the dark, sharpening his claws. Amberridge City was bleeding. It was not a slow, hidden bleed anymore. It was an open wound. Over the course of a single week, the Cold War between the DeMauro family and the Sorvino faction had turned into a slaughter. The news reports were sanitized, calling it a spate of gang-related violence. But Talia Vance knew the truth. She saw the truth every time Vincent walked through the heavy oak doors of the penthouse, smelling of gunpowder and exhaust fumes, his knuckles bruised and his eyes dead. 3 men found in the harbor, a car bomb in the financial district, a drive-by shooting that shattered the windows of a bakery fronting a Sorvino gambling den. Talia stood by the panoramic window of the penthouse, looking down at the glittering city that felt less like a home and more like a battlefield. She wrapped her arms around herself. She was safe here, high above the chaos, surrounded by steel and reinforced glass. But the safety felt suffocating. It felt like a complication. The elevator chimed. Talia turned as Vincent entered. He looked worse than he had the night before. His charcoal suit jacket was draped over his arm, his white shirt stained with dirt and something darker near the cuff. He walked with a heavy, predatory gait, the exhaustion radiating off him in waves. "You are still awake," he said, tossing his jacket onto a chair. His voice was gravel. "It is 3 in the morning. "Vincent," Talia said, "it's hard to sleep when the sirens haven't stopped." Vincent walked to the bar cart and poured himself a drink. He didn't offer her one. He downed the amber liquid in one swallow and poured another. "Go to bed, Talia." "Did you kill them?" The question hung in the air, sharp and accusing. Vincent froze, the glass halfway to his mouth. He turned slowly to face her. The look in his eyes was not the warm, possessive gaze she had grown used to. It was the flat, shark-like stare of the Damaro boss. "What did you say?" "The news said 2 men were gunned down in an alley on 5th Street tonight," Talia said, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to steel herself. "Did you do it?" "They were Sorvino enforcers," Vincent said coldly. "They were the ones who ordered the firebombing of your bar. They were the ones planning to hit the clinic where your brother sleeps. So you executed them." Talia stepped forward, the fear in her chest twisting into anger. "Just like that. Judge, jury, and executioner." "Yes," Vincent replied, setting the glass down with a sharp clink. "Just like that." "Who are you?" Talia whispered, shaking her head. "I look at you, and I don't recognize you anymore. You're turning into a monster. Vincent, you are turning into exactly what they say you are." Something in Vincent snapped. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping inches from her, for the first time since they met. He yelled. The sound was terrifying, a roar of pent-up rage and stress that echoed off the high ceilings. "I am exactly what I have always been," he shouted, looming over her. "Do not stand there in this penthouse, wearing the clothes I bought you, eating the food I paid for, safe behind the walls I built, and judge me for how I keep the wolves at the door. You want to be moral? Fine. Go back to the street. Go back to looking over your shoulder every 10 seconds, but do not dare to look at my hands and call them dirty when they are the only thing keeping you alive." Talia didn't back down. She shoved him in the chest. "I never asked for this. I never asked you to burn the city down for me. I didn't do it for you." Vincent grabbed her wrists, pinning them to her sides. "I did it because you belong to me, and nobody touches what is mine." The air between them shattered. The anger was a physical thing, hot and electric, but beneath it was a current of terror and desperate need. Talia looked up at him, seeing the cracks in his armor, the raw, bleeding fear that he was losing control. And Vincent looked down at her, seeing the woman who made him weak, the woman he would slaughter the world to keep breathing. "I hate you," she breathed, her voice breaking. "Good," Vincent growled. He kissed her. It wasn't romantic. It was a collision. It was a declaration of war and a surrender all at once. The argument dissolved into a frantic, messy tangle of limbs. They didn't make it to the bedroom. They didn't even make it to the couch. Vincent lifted her onto the marble console table, sweeping a vase of expensive lilies onto the floor with a crash of shattering glass. Talia wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer, her fingers digging into his hair, her mouth moving against his with a hunger that frightened her. This wasn't lovemaking. This was an exorcism. They were trying to tear the fear out of each other. His hands were everywhere, rough and demanding, leaving heat marks on her skin. She tore at his shirt, buttons pinging off the floor. There were tears on her face. She didn't know if they were hers or his. "Tell me to stop," Vincent gasped against her neck, his body trembling with the effort of holding back. "Tell me to stop, Talia." "Don't stop," she sobbed, pulling him down to her. "Don't you dare stop." It was desperate. It was terrifyingly vulnerable. Every touch was a plea, every breath a confession. They moved together with a rhythm born of adrenaline and impending doom, seeking oblivion in each other's arms because the world outside was too loud and too dangerous. When it was over, they collapsed onto the floor, tangled in the ruined clothes and the scattered flowers. Vincent held her so tight she could barely breathe, burying his face in the crook of her neck. He didn't say he loved her. He didn't apologize. He just held her as the rain began to lash against the windows, washing the blood from the city streets below. When Talia woke, the space beside her was cold. She was in the bed. He must have carried her there after she fell asleep. She sat up, clutching the silk sheet to her chest, her head pounding. "Vincent?" Silence. She got up, pulled on a robe, and walked out into the main living area. It was empty. The broken glass had been swept away. The vase was replaced. It was as if the night before had never happened. Rocco was standing by the elevator, his massive arms crossed over his chest. He looked grim. "Where is he?" Talia asked, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. "Gone," Rocco rumbled. "He left an hour ago." "Gone where? To the office?" Rocco hesitated. He looked at the floor, then at her. "No. He received a tip. A location on the Sorvino leadership. He took a team. Said it was a private mission. He ordered us to keep you here on lockdown." "He went after Sorvino himself?" Talia felt the blood drain from her face. "In daylight? He wants this finished. Miss Vance, he's tired of waiting." Talia paced the room. This felt wrong. Vincent was aggressive. Yes, but he was calculated. He didn't run off on private missions without a plan. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She picked it up. It was an unknown number. Assuming it was the hospital calling about Leo, she answered, "Hello? Miss Vance." A smooth, unfamiliar voice purred on the other end. "I hope you slept well." Talia froze. "Who is this?" "A mutual friend, or perhaps a mutual problem. My name is Marcus Sorvino." Talia's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything from you. My dear, I have already got what I wanted. I just thought you should know that your boyfriend is, let us say, indisposed." "You are lying," Talia spat. "He is with his men." "Is he? Ask his bodyguard. Ask them if they have heard from him in the last hour." "We caught him, Talia. He walked right into our trap. The great wolf of Amberridge, caught in a snare." Talia looked at Rocco. "Call him," she mouthed. Rocco frowned, pulling out his radio. He spoke into it, waited, and then looked up at her, his expression shifting from stoic to alarmed. He shook his head. "He is alive," Sorvino continued, enjoying the silence. "For now. But my patience is thin. He executed 3 of my men last night. An eye for an eye, don't you think? You have 24 hours to say your prayers. At noon tomorrow, we will send him back to you. In pieces." The line went dead. Talia dropped the phone. It clattered on the marble. "What?" Rocco barked, stepping forward. "They have him," Talia whispered. "Sorvino has him." 10 minutes later, the penthouse was a war room. Silvio, Vincent's lieutenant, had arrived, along with half a dozen captains. They were shouting, checking feeds, making calls. Talia stood in the center of the storm, ignored. "We have a trace on the phone call," one of the tech guys yelled. "It came from the meat packing district, an old warehouse on Front Street. Number 42. "It is a trap," Silvio said immediately, slamming his hand on the table. "They want us to rush in there so they can wipe out the rest of the leadership. Vincent wouldn't want us to take that bait." "So what?" Talia stepped in, her voice cutting through the noise. "You are just going to leave him there?" Silvio turned to her. His face was gray with stress, but his eyes were hard. "We don't know if he is even there. Talia, it could be a recording. It could be a lure. We need to verify. We need to plan." "He has 24 hours, Talia screamed. "They said they are going to execute him. And if I send 50 men into a meat grinder, We lose the war and he dies anyway, Silvio countered, his voice rising. I am in charge now, and I say we hold positions until we have intel. He is your brother, Talia said, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. He is your blood. He is my Don, Silvio corrected, and he would tell me not to be stupid. He turned his back on her. Clear the room. I need to make calls to the commission. Talia stood there, shaking. They weren't going. They were going to sit here and debate strategy while Vincent bled. She looked at the men, hardened killers, all of them, and realized that without Vincent to lead them, they were paralyzed by caution. She walked past Rocco, who was arguing with another guard. On the hallway table, one of the enforcers had left a spare jacket and a shoulder holster while he paced the room. Talia moved with the ghostly silence of a woman who had spent years dodging drunk patrons. She grabbed the heavy pistol from the holster. It was cold and greasy. She shoved it into the deep pocket of her robe, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She went into the bedroom. She dressed in under 2 minutes. Jeans, boots, a dark hoodie. She transferred the gun to her waistband, the metal biting into her skin. She didn't take the elevator. It would alert Rocco. She went to the service stairwell. It was 30 flights down. She started running. The warehouse on Front Street was a rotting carcass of a building. It sat on the edge of the river, the smell of brine and old copper hanging heavy in the air. The rain was falling in sheets now, turning the world into a gray blur. Talia parked the taxi 3 blocks away, paying the driver with the emergency cash she kept in her shoe. She walked the rest of the distance, keeping to the shadows. She was terrified. Her hands were shaking so badly she didn't know if she could even hold the gun, let alone fire it. She was a bartender, not a soldier. But the thought of Vincent, arrogant, infuriating, terrifying Vincent, tied to a chair and waiting for a bullet was enough to keep her feet moving. The warehouse looked abandoned. No guards outside. Another bad sign. She found a side door that was slightly ajar. She slipped inside. The interior was cavernous, filled with rusting hooks hanging from ceiling chains like metal ghosts. The sound of the rain on the tin roof was deafening, drumming a chaotic rhythm. "Vincent?" she whispered, the sound swallowed by the vastness. She moved deeper into the gloom, the gun held out in front of her with 2 trembling hands. So predictable, a voice echoed from the catwalks above. Floodlights slammed on, blinding her. Talia threw her hand up to shield her eyes. Sorvino stood on a platform above, flanked by 4 men with assault rifles trained on her heart. "I told Enzo you would come," Sorvino called down, his voice amused. "I told him. The girl is the weak link. She is emotional. She will try to be a hero. And here you are." "Where is he?" Talia shouted, squinting against the light. "He isn't here, sweetheart. We haven't caught him. Yet." Sorvino laughed. "But now that we have you, he will come to us, and he will walk right into the kill box." It was a trap. It had always been a trap. They hadn't captured Vincent. They had used the lie to capture her, knowing Vincent would destroy the world to get her back. Talia felt a crushing wave of guilt. She had done exactly what Vincent feared. She had become the weapon used against him. "Drop the gun, Talia," Sorvino commanded, "or we shoot your knees first." Talia hesitated. Then, with a sob of defeat, she let the heavy pistol clatter to the concrete floor. 2 men descended the metal stairs to grab her. "You're going to make a wonderful bait," Sorvino sneered. The first man reached for her. Crack! The sound was louder than the thunder outside. The man reaching for her head snapped back, a spray of red mist erupting from his neck. He crumpled to the floor. Sorvino spun around on the catwalk. "What the—" Crack! Crack! 2 more shots rang out from the shadows high in the rafters. The 2 men next to Sorvino dropped, their chests exploding. Vincent fell from the ceiling chains like a demon. He landed on the catwalk with a heavy metallic thud, a dark blur of violence. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in tactical gear, black on black, and he was soaked in blood, though Talia couldn't tell whose. He didn't speak. He moved. He tackled the remaining guard on the platform, driving a knife into the man's collarbone with brutal efficiency. Sorvino scrambled backward, pulling his own gun, but he was too slow. Vincent kicked the weapon out of his hand and backhanded him across the face with enough force to send teeth flying. Sorvino went over the railing. He hit the concrete floor 10 feet below with a sickening crunch. Vincent vaulted over the rail, landing in a crouch beside Talia. He looked terrifying. His face was streaked with grime and blood, his eyes wide and feral. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip bruising. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, shouting over the rain. "Did they touch you?" "No," Talia wept, reaching for him. "I thought they had you. They said they had you." "They lied," Vincent roared, pulling her up. "They knew I was hunting them. They used you to flush me out." More shouts came from the back of the warehouse. "Reinforcements. We have to go," Vincent snarled. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the loading bay doors. "Run!" They burst out into the rain. The storm was raging now, a deluge that blinded them. Bullets pinged off the metal siding of the warehouse behind them. "The river," Vincent shouted. "Go to the river!" They sprinted across the slick pavement. Talia slipped, scraping her palms, but Vincent hauled her up without breaking stride. They reached the edge of the pier, where a small speedboat bobbed violently in the chop. Vincent's escape route that he had compromised to save her. He practically threw her into the boat and jumped in after her, fumbling with the ignition. The engine roared to life. He gunned the throttle, and the boat surged away from the dock just as the Sorvino men burst through the doors, their gunfire lost in the wind. They sped down the dark river. The city lights a blur in the distance. Vincent didn't slow down until they were miles away. Tucked into a cove near the old industrial yards, he cut the engine. The silence was sudden and heavy. "Vincent?" Talia reached out. He turned to her. He tried to speak, but only a wheezing sound came out. He slumped forward. "Vincent!" Talia scrambled to catch him. His weight was immense. She pulled him back against the seat. His hand was pressed to his side. Dark. Thick blood was pulsing between his fingers, mixing with the rain. "You're shot!" she gasped, pressing her hands over his to staunch the flow. "Oh, God, you're shot!" Vincent looked up at her. His skin was gray, his lips blue from the cold and the blood loss, but his eyes were clear. "I told you," he whispered, a faint, bloody smile touching his lips. "I told you to stay in the penthouse." "Shut up," Talia sobbed, tearing the hem of her shirt to make a bandage. "Don't you dare die on me. Vincent DeMauro, do you hear me? You don't get to die." He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. His head lolled back against her shoulder. His breathing was shallow, rapid. "Talia," he murmured, his eyes fluttering shut. "I'm here," she cried, rocking him as the rain washed over them. "I'm here." He went limp in her arms. "Vincent!" Her scream tore through the night, drowned out by the storm, as she held the king of Amberage, who had burned the world for her and was now burning out in her arms. The rain had turned the river into a churning black vein that cut through the heart of the city. Talia steered the stolen speedboat toward the overgrown banks of the heavy industrial zone, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Beside her, Vincent was losing the battle against consciousness. The blood from his side had soaked through the makeshift bandage, staining the boat's leather seat a deep, sickening crimson. She guided the boat into a rotting slip behind an old cannery. It was a place time had forgotten, hidden from the prying eyes of the Sorvino family and the police scanners. "Vincent," she said, her voice sharp with panic as she killed the engine. "We are here. You have to move. I cannot carry you." Vincent's eyes fluttered open. They were glassy, unfocused, but the steel in his spine hadn't dissolved yet. He gritted his teeth, a guttural sound of pain escaping his throat as he forced himself upright. "I am moving," he rasped, with Talia under his arm, acting as a crutch. They stumbled through the rain toward a small brick outbuilding attached to the cannery. This was not a DeMauro safe house. It belonged to Elena, a retired combat medic who owed Talia a favor from years ago. Talia pounded on the metal door. "Elena, open up!" The door swung open, revealing a woman with gray hair and a face carved from granite. She took one look at Talia, then at the bleeding man in the tactical gear, and stepped back without a word. "Kitchen table," Elena commanded. The next 2 hours were a blur of boiling water, the smell of antiseptic, and the sound of Vincent's suppressed groans as Elena dug the bullet out of his oblique muscle. It had missed the vital organs, passing clean through the flesh, but the blood loss was significant. When it was over, Elena washed her hands in the sink. "He's lucky. 2 inches to the left and he would be a memory. I gave him something for the pain and a heavy antibiotic. He needs sleep, and he needs fluids." She looked at Talia. "You are in trouble, aren't you?" "The worst kind," Talia admitted, wringing her hands. "Lock the door behind me. I will go stay with my sister in Queens, if anyone comes. This place is empty." Elena left, leaving them alone in the dim light of the safe house. The only sound was the drumming of the rain on the tin roof and the rhythmic hum of the old refrigerator. Talia pulled a wooden chair next to the cot where Vincent lay. He was stripped to the waist, his torso wrapped in white gauze that stood out starkly against his olive skin and the dark ink of his tattoos. He looked younger when he slept. The lines of cruelty and command around his mouth had softened. He looked like a man, not a myth. Talia watched his chest rise and fall, her own heart slowly decelerating from the frantic pace of the escape. She reached out, her fingers hovering over his hand, before finally resting her palm on his forearm. His skin was burning hot. Vincent's eyes opened. He didn't startle. He just looked at her, his gaze clear and heavy. "You stayed," he whispered. His voice was rough, stripped of its usual baritone power. "Where else would I go?" Talia asked softly. "You burned my bar down, remember?" A faint ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I will buy you a new one. I will buy you 10. I don't want 10 bars. Vincent, I just want you to stop bleeding." He turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. His grip was weak, but the intention was iron. "I thought I lost you. When Sorvino called, when he said they had you, I thought I lost you," Talia interrupted, leaning forward, her forehead resting against their joined hands. "I went there to save you. I took a gun. I don't even know how to shoot, Vincent. But I was going to walk into that warehouse and try—" "You are an idiot," he murmured. But the words were a caress. A brave, reckless idiot. "I learned from the best." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't the heavy, loaded silence of their arguments. It was fragile and intimate. The adrenaline of the gunfight had washed away the anger, the posturing, and the lies. All that was left was the raw truth of what they were to each other. "I was scared," Vincent confessed. The admission hung in the air, shocking coming from the wolf of Amber Ridge. "I have never been scared in my life. Talia, not when my father died, not when the Russians came at us, but tonight, watching you run across that parking lot. I was terrified." "Good," Talia whispered, lifting her head to look him in the eyes. "Now you know how I feel every time you walk out the door." He reached up with his free hand, his fingers tangling in her damp hair, pulling her gently toward him. "Come here." Talia hesitated, looking at his bandages. "You're hurt." "I am fine. Come here." She kicked off her boots and climbed onto the narrow cot beside him, careful to avoid his injured side. She lay down, curling her body into the curve of his uninjured flank. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her flush against him. For a long time, they didn't move. They just lay there, skin on skin, breathing the same air. It was the quietest moment they had ever shared. There was no power struggle, no dominance, just the warmth of 2 people who had walked through fire and come out the other side alive. Talia rested her hand on his chest, feeling the steady, reassuring thud of his heart. She traced the line of a scar on his shoulder, then the sharp angle of his collarbone. "I can't walk away from this," she whispered into the dark. I tried to hate you. I tried to leave, but I can't." "I know," Vincent replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We are bound, you and I. Since the moment you poured me that whiskey—" He shifted slightly, turning his face toward hers. The pain medication made his eyes dark and dilated, but the hunger in them was real. "Kiss me," he said. It wasn't a command, it was a plea. Talia leaned up and pressed her lips to his. It was soft, tentative at first. A question asked and answered. But as his hand moved down her back, pulling her closer, the kiss deepened. It became slow, deliberate, tasting of rain and survival. They made love in the shadows of the safe house, with the storm raging outside. It was nothing like the desperate, angry encounter in the penthouse. This was a slow unraveling. Every touch was measured, every movement careful. Vincent couldn't use his strength, so he used his hands and his mouth, worshiping her with a reverence that made her chest ache. There was a desperate vulnerability to it. They held each other as if they were the last two people on earth, their breaths mingling, their whispers lost against each other's skin. "You are mine," Vincent breathed against her throat, his voice trembling with the effort of holding back. "I am yours," Talia answered, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the words. Morning brought a gray, flat light that filtered through the dusty windows. The rain had stopped, leaving the world outside silent and dripping. Vincent was sitting up on the edge of the cot when Talia woke. He was testing his range of motion, grimacing slightly as the stitches pulled tight. "You should be resting," Talia said, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "I have rested enough," Vincent said. His voice had hardened again. The lover was gone. The dawn was back. "We need to end this." He stood up, steadying himself against the wall for a moment before walking to the window. He peered out through the cracks in the blinds. "It wasn't Sorvino," he said abruptly. Talia sat up, pulling the blanket around her. "What?" "The leak. The ambush at the warehouse. Sorvino isn't smart enough to orchestrate all of this. He's a brute. Someone gave him my location. Someone gave him the codes to the tracking on my phone." He turned to face her, his expression bleak. "It was Marcello," Talia gasped. "Your cousin? The one who manages the docks?" "He has hated me since we were children," Vincent said, his jaw tightening. "He thought he should have been the heir. He thinks I am reckless. He thinks he could run the family better. He sold me out to Sorvino to clear the board." Vincent walked to the table where his tactical gear lay in a pile. He picked up his gun, checking the magazine with a mechanical click. "I'm going to kill him," Vincent stated. "I'm going now to put a bullet in his brain and leave him in the gutter." "No," Talia said. Vincent stopped. He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "No? If you kill him, you make him a martyr," Talia said, standing up. She walked over to him, placing her hand over the gun barrel, lowering it. "If you just execute him, the other families will talk. They will say you killed your own blood out of paranoia. They won't know he was a rat. You will look unstable, Vincent. That is exactly what Marcello wants." "Then what do you suggest?" Vincent asked, his eyes narrowing. "I invite him to tea?" "You humiliate him," Talia said, her voice cold. "You expose him. You let everyone see that he is a traitor and a coward. You strip him of his name before you take his life." Vincent studied her. He saw the steel in her eyes, the sharp intelligence that he had admired from the first night. "How?" "We set a trap," Talia said. "Marcello thinks you are dead or captured. We need him to come out into the open. We need him to think he has won." She took a breath. "I will leave you." Vincent stiffened. "What?" "I will go back to the city," Talia explained quickly. "I will go to the penthouse. I will scream and cry and tell Rocco that you are dead. I will tell everyone that the Sorvinos killed you. I will pack my bags and try to run. And Marcello will come for me," Talia said, "because I am at the loose end, because he will want to gloat. He will come to console the grieving girlfriend and take control of the assets. And when he does, you will be waiting." Vincent shook his head violently. "No, it is too dangerous. I am not using you as bait." "I am already bait, Vincent," Talia argued. "I have been bait since the moment you walked into my bar. At least this time, let me control the hook." Vincent stared at her for a long minute. He hated it. Every instinct in his body screamed to lock her in a room and stand guard outside, but he looked at the fire in her eyes and knew she was right. It was the only way to end the war without starting a civil war within his own ranks. "If he touches you," Vincent whispered, "I will peel his skin off." The plan was put into motion within the hour. Talia returned to the DeMauro penthouse alone. She played her part perfectly. She burst into the lobby, tears streaming down her face, screaming at the guards that Vincent was gone, that he had died in the river. Word spread through the underworld like a virus. The wolf was dead. Talia locked herself in the penthouse, packing a bag with frantic movements. She waited. 2 hours later, the elevator chimed. It wasn't Rocco. It was Marcello. He was a handsome man, smoother than Vincent, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He wore a morning suit that looked suspiciously well-tailored for such short notice. "Talia," he said, stepping into the living room, his arms open. "My dear, I heard the terrible news." Talia backed away, clutching her bag. "I have to go. Marcello, I can't stay here. The Sorvinos, they will come for me next." "Hush, hush," Marcello cooed, advancing on her. "You are safe now. I am here. I am taking over Vincent's responsibilities. All of them." He reached for her. Talia flinched, expecting him to play the comforting cousin. Instead, his hand snapped out and grabbed her by the throat. The facade dropped instantly. Marcello's face twisted into a sneer of pure malice. "Did he suffer?" Marcello asked, his grip tightening. "Tell me he squealed like a pig before he died." Talia clawed at his hand, gagging. He fought." "Good," Marcello spat. "I hated him, always walking around like he was a god. And you." He looked her up and down with disgust. "The little stray dog he picked up. You are the reason he got sloppy. You are the reason I won." He dragged her toward the door. "Where are we going?" Talia choked out. "To the docks," Marcello said. "I have a boat waiting. You are going to disappear." Talia. Tragic, grief-stricken girlfriend throws herself into the ocean. Very romantic. Talia's heart hammered. This wasn't part of the plan. Vincent was supposed to be here. He was supposed to step out of the shadows now. "Vincent!" she screamed, hoping he was hiding in the study. "He can't hear you." Marcello laughed. "He is fish food." He dragged her into the elevator, pressing the button for the garage. 2 of his personal guards were waiting there. They threw her into the back of a van. Talia realized with a sickening jolt that Vincent wasn't in the penthouse. He had been delayed. Or maybe he had passed out from the blood loss back at the safe house. She was on her own. The warehouse at the docks was cold and smelled of diesel. It was the same shipping hub where Talia had pointed out the discrepancy in the logs. Marcello threw her onto a wooden chair in the center of the empty floor. He didn't tie her up. He had 3 armed men standing around her. He felt secure. He paced in front of her, manic with victory. "You know," Marcello said, lighting a cigarette, "I almost feel bad for you. You really thought he loved you, didn't you? Men like us don't love. Talia, we possess. You were just a shiny new toy." "He was twice the man you are," Talia said, her voice steady despite the terror seizing her chest. Marcello's face darkened. He stepped forward and backhanded her. Talia's head snapped to the side, the taste of copper filling her mouth. "He was a fool," Marcello shouted, "and now he is dead, and I am the king." He leaned in close, blowing smoke in her face. "And to make sure there are no loose ends, I sent a team to the clinic. Your brother, is it? Leo?" Talia froze. "No. Yes." Marcello grinned. "I told them to wait for my signal. When I kill you, they kill him. Maybe I will have them send him to Vincent in pieces. Oh wait, Vincent is dead." Rage, white-hot and blinding, flooded Talia's veins. "You touch him, and I swear to God, you will what?" Marcello mocked. "Cry." Suddenly, the lights in the warehouse flickered. The hum of the electricity died. The huge space was plunged into semi-darkness, lit only by the gray daylight filtering through the skylights high above. "What is that?" Marcello snapped, looking at his men. "Check the breaker." One of the guards moved toward the wall. Thwip! A soft, wet sound. The guard dropped, a black arrow protruding from his neck. Marcello spun around. "What the—" Thwip! The second guard, standing near the loading bay doors, crumpled, clutching his chest. "He is here," Talia whispered, a fierce smile breaking through the blood on her lip. Marcello pulled his gun, his eyes darting around the shadows. "Show yourself! I know you are dead, I know it." A figure stepped out from behind a stack of shipping containers. Vincent DeMauro did not look dead. He looked like the Grim Reaper. He was moving stiffly, favoring his left side, but his right arm was steady. He held a suppressed pistol, extended and locked. "Hello, cousin," Vincent said. His voice was low, echoing through the silent warehouse. "Vincent," Marcello stammered, backing away, using Talia's chair as a shield. It wasn't me. It was Sorvino. He forced me." "Liar," Vincent said, taking a step forward. The third guard raised his rifle. Vincent fired twice. 2 shots to the chest. The guard fell backward over a crate. "Kill him," Marcello screamed at the empty air, realizing he was alone. He grabbed Talia by the hair, hauling her up and jamming his gun against her temple. "Back off," Marcello shrieked, his voice cracking. "I will blow her brains out, I swear." Vincent stopped. He was 20 feet away. He lowered his gun slightly, his eyes locked on Marcello's face. "Let her go, Marcello, and I will let you live long enough to beg." "You are weak," Marcello yelled, trembling. "You always were. You let this whore ruin everything." Talia saw Vincent's eyes flick to hers. A microsecond of communication. "Trust me." Talia didn't wait. She stomped her heel down onto Marcello's instep with every ounce of strength she had. Marcello howled, his grip loosening for a fraction of a second. Talia dropped her weight, twisting away from the gun barrel. Marcello fired, but the shot went wild, hitting the concrete floor. Vincent didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, ignoring the pain in his side. He didn't shoot. He didn't want it to be quick. He slammed into Marcello, knocking the gun away. They hit the floor hard. Vincent was on top of him instantly. He pinned Marcello's wrists to the ground, his face inches from his cousin's terrified eyes. "You wanted my crown?" Vincent snarled. "You wanted my life?" He released one of Marcello's hands to draw a knife from his belt. "Vincent, please," Marcello sobbed. "We are family." "Not anymore," Vincent said. He drove the knife down, not into Marcello's chest, but into the floor, right next to his ear. The steel rang against the concrete. Vincent leaned in, whispering something that made Marcello go pale. Then, with a brutal, efficient motion, he knocked his cousin unconscious with the heavy hilt of the blade. Vincent rolled off him, gasping for air, clutching his side where his stitches had surely torn. Talia scrambled over to him. "Vincent!" He looked up at her, his face gray with pain but his eyes burning with triumph. "Is Leo safe?" she asked frantically. "Rocco is at the clinic." Vincent wheezed. "He has been there all morning. Your brother is fine." Talia let out a sob of relief and threw her arms around his neck. Vincent groaned but held her tight. "It is over," he whispered into her hair. "The rat is caught." But as sirens began to wail in the distance, police, finally called by the gunfire, Talia looked at the unconscious body of Marcello and knew that while the rat was caught, the consequences of his betrayal were just beginning. They had won the battle, but the war for their future was far from over. The silence in the warehouse was a deception. It was the heavy, suffocating pause before a guillotine blade dropped. Vincent DeMauro stood over his cousin, his chest heaving as he fought the agony radiating from his stitched side. He reached for Talia, his hand bloody but steady. "We need to go," he rasped. "The police are 3 minutes away." Talia took a step toward him, relief flooding her veins like a narcotic. It was over. The rat was caught, but rats are most dangerous when they are cornered. On the floor, Marcello's eyes snapped open. He had not been unconscious, merely stunned. With a snarl of pure, desperate malice, he kicked upward, his boot connecting with Vincent's injured hip. Vincent roared, his leg buckling as pain blinded him. He collapsed to one knee. In that split second of vulnerability, Marcello scrambled backward, dragging himself toward a discarded pistol lying near the crates. He snatched it up. "No!" Talia screamed. She lunged, but Marcello was faster. He grabbed her by the wrist, spinning her around and jamming the barrel of the gun into the soft hollow of her throat. He hauled her up against his chest, using her body as a shield. Vincent froze. He was on one knee, his own weapon raised, but he could not fire. The target was too small, and his hands were trembling from blood loss. "Drop it!" Marcello shrieked, his voice cracking with hysteria. "Drop the gun, Vincent, or I will paint the walls with her." The sirens were louder now, a rising chorus of wails that signaled the end of the DeMauro reign if they were found here. but Vincent did not hear them. He saw only the terror in Talia's wide eyes and the trembling finger on the trigger pressed against her neck. Vincent slowly opened his hand. His gun clattered to the concrete floor. "Let her go. Marcello," Vincent said. His voice was eerily calm, a low rumble amidst the chaos. "This is between you and me. It always has been. She is the reason you are weak." Marcello spat, backing toward the loading bay doors, dragging Talia with him. "You broke the rules for her. You started a war for her. Now you die for her." "Fine," Vincent said. He stood up slowly, raising his hands. He took a step forward, exposing his chest, his heart, his life. "Take me. Let her walk out the door, and I am yours. You want to be the king? Be the king. Kill me. But let her go." Talia struggled against the arm, crushing her windpipe. "Vincent, no," she choked out. Marcello paused. The offer tempted him. To kill the Wolf of Amberridge, unarmed and begging? It was the victory he had dreamed of since they were children fighting in the schoolyard. "You think you are a hero?" Marcello sneered. His eyes shifted from Talia to Vincent. "Heroes die, cousin." He shifted his aim. Marcello fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Vincent's body jerked violently backward as the bullet tore through his left shoulder, shattering the bone. He hit the ground hard. "No!" Talia screamed. The sound tore from her throat, primal and raw. Marcello laughed, a high, manic sound of triumph. He turned the gun back toward Vincent to finish the job. He forgot who he was holding. Talia Vance was not a soldier. She was not a killer. But she was a sister who had protected her disabled brother from the cruelty of the world for years. She was a woman who had survived the night shift in the darkest corners of the city. She did not freeze. She exploded. She slammed her head backward into Marcello's nose. There was a sickening crunch of cartilage. Marcello howled, his head snapping back, tears of pain blinding him. His grip loosened for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Talia spun around and tackled him. She drove her shoulder into his gut, sending them both crashing into a stack of empty pallets. The gun flew from Marcello's hand, skittering across the floor. Vincent was already moving. He ignored the hole in his shoulder. He ignored the blood soaking his shirt. He moved with the last reserves of his strength, a dying wolf making one final lunge. He reached Marcello before the traitor could recover. There were no words, no final speeches. Vincent grabbed Marcello by the lapels of his suit and threw him to the ground. He retrieved his knife from where it had fallen earlier. Marcello looked up, his face a mask of blood and terror. "Vincent, please!" Vincent ended it. It was quick, brutal, necessary. Vincent stood up, swaying. The knife dropped from his numb fingers. He looked at Talia. She was huddled against the pallets, shaking, her dress torn, her eyes locked on him. "Are you hurt?" he whispered. Before she could answer, the warehouse doors burst open, but it wasn't the police. "Boss!" Rocco and Silvio stormed in, flanked by 4 Damaro soldiers. They had intercepted the police dispatch and beaten the patrol cars by seconds. Rocco took in the scene, the body of Marcello, the blood on the floor, and his Don swaying on his feet. "We have to go," Rocco barked, rushing forward. "The cops are at the perimeter." Vincent took one step toward Talia and collapsed. "Vincent!" Talia scrambled to him, catching his head before it hit the concrete. His eyes were rolling back in his head. His skin was cold, clammy. "Get him up!" she screamed at the men. "Get him to the car!" Rocco scooped Vincent up as if he weighed nothing. They ran. They burst out into the rain-slicked night, just as the blue and red lights of the police cruisers swept over the building. They piled into the black SUVs waiting in the alley. Talia climbed into the back seat, pulling Vincent's head into her lap. "Drive!" she yelled, as the car screeched away, vanishing into the labyrinth of the city streets. Talia pressed her hands over the wound in Vincent's shoulder, feeling the warm, sticky blood pulse against her palms. "Stay with me," she sobbed, rocking him. You promised you wouldn't leave me." Vincent's eyes opened a slit. He looked up at her, faint and fading. "Talia," he breathed, "I'm here. He lost consciousness before he could finish the sentence. The car sped on into the darkness, carrying the king of Amberridge away from his kingdom and toward the only thing that mattered anymore. 6 weeks later, the private clinic was tucked away in the hills, a place of white walls, pine trees, and discretion. It was quiet here. The smog and noise of Amberridge felt like a lifetime away. Talia sat on the edge of the bed. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, painting golden squares on the duvet. Vincent was sitting up, reading a book. His arm was in a sling, and he had lost weight. The sharp angles of his face were more pronounced, and there was a streak of gray in his hair that hadn't been there before. But he was alive. He closed the book as she watched him. "You are staring," he said. His voice was stronger now, though it still carried a rasp. "I am admiring my handiwork," Talia teased gently, reaching out to adjust the sling. "The doctor said you are healing faster than they expected. They think you are a medical marvel. I told them you are just too stubborn to die." Vincent chuckled. He reached out with his good hand and captured hers, bringing it to his lips. He kissed her knuckles, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "I had a good reason to live," he said softly. The door opened, and Silvio walked in. He looked uncomfortable in the sterile environment, holding a thick leather briefcase. "Boss," Silvio nodded. "Talia." Vincent's demeanor shifted instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by business. "Do you have them?" "Everything," Silvio said, placing the briefcase on the bedside table. "The ledgers, the contact lists, the blackmail files." "The black books," Vincent nodded. "And the transition?" "Smooth. The captains have accepted the new structure, with Marcello gone and the Sorvinos in retreat. Nobody wants to challenge us. They are ready for me to take the chair. If you are sure." Vincent looked at the briefcase. It contained the secrets of a century of crime. It contained the power to crush senators and judges. It was the heart of the Damaro Empire. "I'm sure," Vincent said. He looked at Talia. "Burn them," Vincent ordered. Silvio blinked. "Burn them, boss. This is leverage. This is insurance." "It is a shackle," Vincent corrected. "Burn the books, Silvio. Start fresh. Run the legitimate side. Keep the peace. But the old ways. Let them die with Marcello." Silvio stood silent for a moment, then nodded solemnly. "Understood. Thank you, Vincent." "Don't thank me," Vincent said, leaning back against the pillows. "Just don't call me. I am retired." Silvio left, closing the door softly behind him. Vincent let out a long breath, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his chest. He turned back to Talia. "So," he said, a playful glint returning to his eyes, "unemployed, one arm, homeless. I am not exactly a catch anymore, am I?" Talia smiled, leaning in close until their foreheads touched. "You are a fixer-upper. But I like the project." She kissed him softly. It was a kiss of promise, of healing. When she pulled back, Vincent studied her face. "You still think I scare you?" Talia laughed, the sound light and free. "Not anymore. I have seen you in a hospital gown eating Jell-O. The mystery is gone. Mr. Damaro." Vincent's hand moved to the back of her neck, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin there. His gaze dropped to her lips, darkening with that familiar heat. "Not anymore," she whispered, "but you shake me just the same." The vineyard was on the edge of the valley, where the air smelled of grapes and turned earth. It was a small property, far from the flashing lights of the city. The kitchen was warm, filled with the scent of garlic and rosemary. Leo was outside on the porch, laughing as he played fetch with a golden retriever they had adopted a week ago. His laughter drifted through the open French doors, a sound Talia hadn't heard in years. She stood at the counter, chopping tomatoes. She wore a simple yellow sundress, her feet bare against the cool terracotta tiles. There were no guards at the gate, no weapons in the drawer, just peace. She felt him before she saw him. Vincent walked into the kitchen. He was wearing a loose white linen shirt, the sleeves rolled up, revealing the healing scars on his forearms. He looked different. The tension that had carried him for a decade was gone. He walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, burying his face in her neck. "Something smells good," he murmured. his breath warm against her skin. "It is just pasta," Talia said, leaning back into him. "Domestic bliss," Vincent hummed, swaying her gently side to side. He reached over and turned on the small radio on the counter. An old jazz standard began to play, soft, slow, and sweet. "Dance with me," he said. "I'm cooking." "The tomatoes can wait." He spun her around. Talia laughed as she wiped her hands on a towel and let him pull her into the center of the room. They moved together in the golden light of the setting sun. He held her close, his hand on her waist, hers on his shoulder. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't a power play. It was just a man and a woman, safe in the home they had built from the ashes of their past. Vincent looked down at her. His eyes were full of a terrifying amount of love. "Tell me again," he murmured, his voice low and rough. "Tell me again I don't scare you." Talia looked up at him. She saw the scars, the history, the danger that would always be a part of him. But she also saw the man who had taken a bullet for her, the man who had burned an empire to hold her hand. She leaned in, her lips brushing the sharp line of his jaw. "You don't," she whispered. "You love me." Vincent smiled, capturing her mouth in a kiss that tasted of wine and forever. "I do," he vowed against her lips. "God help me, I do." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the vineyard, but in the kitchen, there was only light. "Thank you so much for listening to this story. You think you scare me?" She laughed. Mafia Boss cornered her and said, "Then why are you shaking?" I truly hope you enjoyed the journey of Vincent and Talia, from the dark streets of Amberridge to the peaceful vineyards of their new life. It has been a pleasure to bring this tale of danger, passion, and redemption to life for you. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on the ending. Did Vincent make the right choice? What was your favorite part of the story? If you enjoyed this series, please consider subscribing to the Mafia Romance Stories channel for more intense, emotional, and thrilling tales. Don't forget to like and share your thoughts in English in the comments section. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, keep reading and keep dreaming.